don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Have you ever felt guilty for not feeling love toward the person who was supposed to love you the most? Your mother? It's a painful question, one that most people never dare to say out loud. Yet deep down, many carry it in silence. Society tells us that a mother's love is sacred, pure and unconditional. We grow up surrounded by stories, movies, and ideals that portray the mother as the ultimate symbol of care and devotion. But what happens when that ideal doesn't match your reality? For some, love came with conditions. For others, it was hidden behind criticism, coldness, or absence. Maybe you were told you were too sensitive, too needy, or that you had to behave a certain way to be worthy of affection. You learned quietly that love had to be earned, that approval meant safety, that silence meant survival. This invisible weight shapes more than we realize. As adults, we often find ourselves confused about why we feel so anxious, why we constantly seek validation, or why relationships exhaust us emotionally. Somewhere that old wound whispers, "If my own mother didn't love me freely, who will?" But here is a truth many never hear. Not feeling loved by your mother does not mean you are unlovable. It means your emotional needs were not met in the way you needed. It means there's a wound, not a flaw. Acknowledging this is the first act of healing. The moment you allow yourself to recognize the pain without judgment, something begins to shift. You stop pretending and you start seeing. In this video, we'll go deeper into this silent inheritance, what psychologists call the mother wound. You'll discover how it forms, how it affects your choices and self-image, and most importantly, how you can begin to free yourself from it. Because beneath the pain lies something powerful, the possibility of becoming who you truly are, without the need to earn love ever again. The mother wound isn't always something we can see. It doesn't always come from obvious neglect or open hostility. Often it lives in the quiet moments, in what was missing rather than what happened. It's not just a memory. It's a pattern that becomes part of our emotional DNA. Psychologists describe this wound as a deep internal pain formed when a child's emotional needs are not met by the mother figure, whether because she was absent, overwhelmed, critical, or emotionally unavailable. The result is a sense of emptiness that follows us into adulthood, quietly shaping our relationships, our confidence, and even how we speak to ourselves. There are, in truth, two faces of this wound. The first is the obvious one, the kind that comes from visible rejection, humiliation, abandonment, or even aggression. These stories are easier to name because the pain is tangible. You know what hurt you, but then there is the hidden wound. It comes disguised as love, overprotection, control, or conditional affection. Maybe your mother said she loved you, but only when you behaved a certain way. Maybe she cared for you deeply, but her care came with guilt or pressure. This kind of love confuses the soul. It teaches you that closeness can be suffocating and that love demands self-erasure. The invisible wound is often the most dangerous because it hides behind good intentions. You grow up believing nothing was wrong, yet something inside you feels broken. You may find yourself constantly trying to be perfect, to please others, or to suppress emotions that might upset someone. Over time, these experiences create what psychologists call internal scripts, unconscious stories that tell us who we are and what we deserve. If you learned that love must be earned, you may unconsciously repeat that story with friends, partners, even at work. The same emotional dance plays out again and again, without you realizing its origin. Recognizing this wound doesn't mean blaming your mother. It means understanding how her pain may have become yours, and how awareness is the first step to freedom. You may not remember every moment from your childhood, but the wound remembers you. It doesn't stay in the past. It follows, whispering through the choices you make, the people you trust, and the love you accept. What was once a survival mechanism becomes a pattern, and that pattern begins to define your life. One of the first signs of the mother wound in adulthood is difficulty trusting others. Deep down, you may fear that if you open your heart, you'll be hurt or rejected again. This fear often shows up as emotional distance or as an anxious need for reassurance. You long for connection, but also brace for disappointment. Another common manifestation is low self-worth. When love was conditional, the child inside you learned to measure value by performance, by being good, strong, pleasing, or successful. As an adult, you might feel like you're never enough, no matter how hard you try. Compliments don't sink in. Criticism cuts too deep. You may also notice a harsh inner critic living in your mind, a voice that sounds uncannily familiar. It's often the internalized echo of your mother's tone, demanding, impatient, or disappointed. Even when no one else is judging you, you judge yourself. Boundaries too become blurred. Because you were once rewarded for compliance and punished for resistance, you might find it nearly impossible to say no. You absorb other people's pain, fix their problems, and neglect your own needs in the name of love. This constant self-abandonment keeps the wound alive. Relationships mirror the original dynamic. Many people unknowingly seek partners who replicate the emotional patterns they grew up with, emotionally unavailable, critical, or controlling. It's not because you enjoy pain. It's because your nervous system confuses familiarity with safety. You're not chasing love, you're chasing resolution. But what if the cycle could be understood rather than repeated? Healing begins the moment you notice these patterns, not as proof of weakness but as evidence of survival. The same child who adapted to pain still lives within you, waiting not for another's approval, but for your own compassion. Every wound begins with a bond. The mother wound at its core is a story about attachment, the first relationship you ever had. Long before you could speak or think, your body already knew what safety felt like. When your cries were met with warmth, you learned that the world was safe. When they were ignored, criticized, or inconsistently answered, you learned that love was uncertain. This early blueprint is what psychologists call attachment style, and it silently guides how we connect for the rest of our lives. A child whose needs were met consistently develops secure attachment, the ability to love freely and trust easily. But when love was unpredictable or conditional, the foundation cracks. If your mother was emotionally distant, you may have developed an avoidant attachment. You learned to protect yourself by needing less, by appearing strong, by not depending on anyone. If she was inconsistent, loving one day, cold the next, you may have developed an anxious attachment where love feels like a constant test. And if love came mixed with fear or chaos, you may carry a disorganized attachment, forever torn between craving closeness and fearing it. Carl Jung took this understanding even deeper. He spoke of the inner mother, the internalized image of the mother that lives within every psyche. She becomes a voice, a presence, a shadow. If your real mother was nurturing, this inner figure becomes a source of comfort and wisdom. But if your mother was critical or distant, that voice often turns into an internal judge, whispering that you're not enough, that you should be better, quieter, different. This inner mother shapes how you care for yourself. It decides whether you rest or push, forgive or punish, soothe or silence your pain. Healing begins when you realize you can reparent yourself. You can become the mother you never had, one who listens, comforts, and sets boundaries out of love, not fear. By understanding the roots of attachment and meeting your inner mother with compassion, you begin to rewrite the story that once controlled you. When Jung explored the human psyche, he discovered that within each of us lives both a feminine and a masculine principle, the anima and the animus. These aren't about gender, but about energy, balance, and how we relate to both love and power within ourselves. The anima represents the inner feminine, intuition, emotion, receptivity, creativity. The animus symbolizes the inner masculine, logic, action, structure, and strength. In a healthy psyche, these forces work together in harmony. But when our earliest relationship with the mother is wounded, this inner harmony becomes distorted. For men, the wounded anima often appears as confusion in relationships. A man who felt emotionally neglected by his mother may unconsciously seek the same coldness in his partners, mistaking emotional distance for love. He might become drawn to women who are unavailable, critical, or detached, hoping, without knowing, to finally earn the affection he never received. His sensitivity, rather than being honored, becomes a source of shame. For women, the wounded animus manifests differently. The critical voice of the mother can become an internal tyrant, demanding perfection, repressing vulnerability, and measuring worth through achievement. Such women may feel driven, capable, and admired, yet secretly disconnected from softness, pleasure, or emotional safety. The inner masculine becomes a judge rather than a protector. These archetypal imbalances affect not only how we love others, but how we love ourselves. When your anima is wounded, you may reject your emotions as weakness. When your animus is wounded, You may distrust your strength or fear independence. Both create an inner division, a battle between the parts of you that long to unite. Healing this split begins with awareness. When you recognize that your inner masculine and feminine have been shaped by pain, you can start to restore their natural dialogue. You can invite the tender and the strong to coexist, not as opposites but as allies. The mother wound in this sense is not just personal. It's mythic. It touches the very balance of creation within you. Some wounds run deeper than neglect or inconsistency. When a mother carries narcissistic traits, the pain is subtle yet pervasive, shaping the child's sense of self in profound ways. Love becomes conditional, care is entwined with control, and emotional presence often comes with strings attached. In such households, the child learns to adapt quickly. To survive, they may suppress needs, hide emotions, or perform endlessly to please. Over time, this adaptation becomes part of the personality, a fragile ego, hypersensitivity to criticism, and a constant need for external validation. The child grows skilled at predicting moods, decoding silences, and avoiding conflict, yet always at the expense of authenticity. The effects ripple far into adulthood. Relationships often mirror these early dynamics. Partners who are emotionally demanding or controlling may feel familiar, and the desire to be loved properly can trap the individual in cycles of compromise and self-erasure. Even career and social interactions can unconsciously repeat the same patterns, performing, pleasing, and avoiding rejection at all costs. But awareness can break the cycle. Recognizing that the patterns you repeat are not failures, but adaptations to survive a specific environment, is the first step toward freedom. You can separate your identity from the script written by someone else's needs. You can reclaim your voice and your choices. For those who are now parents themselves, this understanding is vital. The cycle does not need to continue. By seeing how your own wounds shaped your behavior, you gain the power to parent with awareness rather than unconscious repetition. The hope of healing lies not in demanding apology or change from the past, but in reclaiming yourself in the present. Small acts, setting boundaries, practicing self-compassion, and choosing authenticity begin to dismantle the patterns that once held you captive. Every moment you act from your own truth, rather than conditioned fear, is a step toward liberation. Healing is not instant, nor is it linear. It is a process of peeling back layers, discovering where you were shaped by fear, and learning to respond with love, first for yourself, then for the world around you. Understanding the mother wound is crucial, but awareness alone does not heal. True liberation comes from practical, intentional action, the conscious steps that allow the pain to be felt, expressed, and transformed. One of the most powerful practices is the therapeutic letter. This is a letter you write to your mother, or to the image of her in your mind, expressing every feeling you were never allowed to voice. You do not send it. The purpose is not confrontation, but externalization, bringing buried emotions into the light. Anger, sorrow, and longing all have a place on the page. When you give them form, you begin to release their hold. Another method is the empty chair technique, drawn from Gestalt therapy. You sit across from an empty chair and speak to the mother who wounded you, then respond as if you are her. This dialogue helps you confront unresolved emotions, gain insight, and reclaim authority over your own story. Meditation and inner visualization can also be transformative. Guided practices can allow you to meet your inner mother, the internalized voice that may be critical or cold, and offer compassion, validation, and understanding. This reparenting is a gentle but profound way to rewrite the old scripts that have governed your life. Setting boundaries is equally essential. Healing requires saying no to what drains you and yes to what nurtures you. It can feel uncomfortable at first because your nervous system is accustomed to compliance, but each boundary strengthens your autonomy and reinforces self-respect. Therapy is another invaluable resource. Working with a skilled psychologist or counselor provides support, tools, and accountability as you navigate these deep emotional waters. Professional guidance can accelerate healing and help prevent re-traumatization. Finally, remember that anger and grief are part of the process, not obstacles. Allow yourself to feel, to cry, to rage. These emotions are not only valid but necessary. Only when the energy is acknowledged can it transform into clarity, self-compassion, and empowerment. By combining reflection, expression, boundary setting, and professional support, the wound that once defined you begins to loosen its grip. You step into your life with more presence, awareness, and the ability to choose love that is freely given, starting with the love you cultivate for yourself. Healing the mother wound is not a one-time event. It is a journey of individuation, a term Carl Jung used to describe becoming whole. It is the process of integrating every part of yourself, acknowledging the pain, and reclaiming the love that was once denied. The past no longer has the power to dictate who you are or who you can become. The first step in rebirth is acceptance. Accept that the wound exists, honor the child who endured it, and allow yourself to feel the emotions that have long been suppressed. This is not about blame or resentment. It is about clarity. Only when you recognize your own suffering can you begin to nurture the parts of yourself that were neglected. Next comes self-compassion. You are not unworthy. You are not broken. You are learning what was never taught, that love begins within. By treating yourself with gentleness and patience, you create a foundation of trust that no past rejection can erode. Another essential step is reclaiming your power. Each boundary you enforce, each decision made from authenticity rather than fear, is an act of liberation. You are choosing to prioritize your emotional well-being, to honor your needs, and to refuse the old patterns of self-abandonment. The final step is becoming the source of your own love. Stop seeking scraps of affection from those who cannot give it. Instead, cultivate the warmth, validation, and care that you have always needed. This is not selfish, it is sacred. The more you nourish yourself, the more you can engage in relationships without dependency or compromise of your essence. Freedom is a choice, moment by moment. It is the commitment to live consciously, to embrace both the shadow and the light within you, and to move forward as your own advocate and nurturer. As you stand at this threshold, know that the journey does not end as it evolves. The wound may leave echoes, but you now have the awareness and the tools to respond from strength, not survival. Take a moment to commit to yourself. Share in the comments how you will honor this newfound freedom. Subscribe to continue this journey of self-discovery and empowerment. The life you always needed to live is waiting, and it begins with the love you choose to give yourself today.